The birth of Isaac, while very joyous, also marked tension in Abraham's household. If you remember, Abraham and Sarah had decided to do things their own way, not wait on God, and to take the Egyptian maidservant Hagar as a surrogate mother, as a concubine of Abraham, as a second wife, in order to get the child that God had promised them, in order to establish the man through which Abraham's line would begin. They had done that in their own strength. God did not bless that union, it was not his plan. Yet God, in his mercy, does promise that he will bless Ishmael. We've looked at that, we've looked at who Ishmael would be. But now that Isaac is born, there's going to be some tension in the house. We pick up in verse 8 of Genesis 21 today. And the child, that is Isaac, grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, Cast out the slave woman with her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son, that is, Ishmael. He does love Ishmael. But God said to Abraham, Be not displeased because of the boy, and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. As she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, Let me not look upon the death of the child. As she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, hold him fast in your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. We see here that God's hand was upon Ishmael. This is the second time we've seen Hagar in the wilderness, on the brink of death, if you will. Especially now, she's afraid that her son's about to die. She cries out to God. She leaves him under a tree and goes a distance to have a good cry. And God sends an angel once again to Hagar. And he preserves Ishmael's life. Because he is the offspring of Abraham, God blesses this blunder of Abraham and Sarah's judgment. The human life that was a result of their own concoction and their own strategizing, God does not penalize Ishmael here. He blesses him. Now, in terms of Ishmael walking with God and being a godly man, we see no record of that. There's not this promise of a union and a following of the Lord. A walking with God is not seen as the testimony of Ishmael's life. But the fact that God blessed him and honored the covenant that he made with Abraham is evident. We see that he grows up, he's strong, he's a skillful archer. A nation is going to arise from his lineage as well, the Ishmaelites in Arabia. And Hagar takes a wife for her son when he's older, a wife from Egypt. She herself was an Egyptian. And so the union of Abraham's seed and Egyptian seed is where the Ishmaelites spring from. Which is kind of telling as well, because it is a union of God's man, the Christian Abraham, and the world, Egypt, that frolic, that spiritual prostitution that took place is what resulted in Ishmael. And while there are physical nations and things represented here and real people, it also really teaches us a powerful lesson about our spiritual lives. As believers, where are we in our walk with God? When we're going through trials, are we attempting to go the world's way? Are we attempting to combine our Christian life with some things of the world? Maybe not some outright, blatant, really wrong things, but what we consider lesser things. Maybe some pleasures or some goals that the world has. Or maybe gaining, money or certain possessions or power or some dream. We could even quote unquote call it the American dream. Whatever you call it. If you're trying to combine some of the goals of the world, your own desires, along with obedience to God, you're doing the same thing Abraham did. And there can be consequences to that. Yes, there are people you meet and relationships you will form as you go throughout this life. Even if you're a Christian and you're engaged in the world and you're getting friends that are not very godly, God can still redeem that. But the question is not what God can do. The question is not even God's mercy. The question for all of us is responsibility. What will our choice be? Will we choose to wholeheartedly seek the Lord? Or will we choose to kind of live our own way? Our responsibility as human beings is what choice we're going to make. God's plan is settled. That cannot be altered by our choices. God is already sovereign, and his plan has been established before the foundation of the world. But our responsibility, every single one of us, comes down to our choices. So today, what choices do you need to make in your life? Father, I pray you would help us to have clarity on what those choices are and where we may be following the world and attempting to weave together our own plan rather than being obedient simply and completely to you, Lord. I ask this in your name. Amen.